He was really ill. And he was in Montreal. And always he used to be with us on my birthday. And this birthday, he sent me flowers from Montreal. I said, I'm sorry, Mom. This time I can't be with you on your birthday, but I'll make it up. But of course it was October, and then of course he was very ill. It was very sad at that time.
Freddie Mercury is dead. That was the shocking headline on the morning of November 25th, 1991. One of the most electrifying voices in music, silenced forever by a disease still shrouded in fear, ignorance, and stigma. Just one day earlier, Mercury had publicly confirmed he was battling AIDS. Within 24 hours, he was gone. The world was stunned. Fans mourned in the streets, tributes poured in from every corner of the globe, and radio stations played Bohemian Rhapsody on repeat. But this wasn't just the loss of a rock star, it was the fall of a cultural icon, a man whose voice had shattered boundaries, whose stage presence defied definition, and whose life up to his final breath remained unapologetically his own. Yet to truly understand Freddie Mercury, the legend and the man, we must start long before the spotlight in a place far removed from stadiums and superstardom. Stay with us till the end because his mother reveals some dark secrets about him. From Zanzibar to stardom. Freddie Mercury was born Jer Bulsara on September 5, 1946, on the East African island of Zanzibar, a world away from London's rock clubs and global fame. His early life was a complex blend of cultural richness and quiet discipline. His parents, Bomi and Jer Bulsara, practiced Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest religions, rooted in tradition, humility, and moral discipline. His father worked as a cashier for the British Colonial Office, and the family lived modestly but securely. Farouk's upbringing was steeped in values of respect, responsibility, and restraint, values that would eventually be both a foundation and a foil to the life he would later create for himself. At just 7 years old, Freddie was sent to St. Peter's School, a British-style boarding school in India. It was here that the first sparks of musical brilliance began to glow. He learned to play the piano and joined the school choir, where teachers quickly noticed his uncanny musical ear. But perhaps most importantly, he joined his very first band, the Hectics, a group of schoolboys covering rock and roll hits at local events. The crowd may have been small, but the feeling of the spotlight was intoxicating. Even then, Farouk was different. He moved with a quiet grace, spoke with a unique cadence, and exuded a confidence that made others lean in. Classmates remember him as shy yet magnetic, traits that would one day define the paradox that was Freddie Mercury. In 1963, as political unrest engulfed Zanzibar, the Bulsara family fled to England. It was a harsh uprooting, from the sun-baked island to the cold suburbs of Middlesex. But this displacement was also a rebirth. Freddie, now a teenager, found himself thrust into a new world teeming with cultural upheaval, sexual revolution, and most fatefully, rock music. He enrolled at Ealing Art College, studying graphic design and soaking up the emerging art and music scenes of 1960s London. This era of experimentation shaped not only his creative eye, but also his taste in music, fashion, and identity. Freddie wasn't just finding his voice, he was building an entire persona, and it wouldn't be long before he found the band that would carry that persona to mythic heights. London, 1970. The city pulsed with electricity, not from its street lamps, but from its sound. Rock was mutating. The Beatles had disbanded. Jimi Hendrix was gone. And yet something new was stirring in the underground clubs and college basements. Something louder, bolder, more theatrical. Amid this energy, Freddie Bulsara crossed paths with two struggling musicians. Brian May, a towering guitarist with a homemade guitar, and Roger Taylor, a wild drummer with both power and polish. Their band was called Smile. But Freddie saw something more, something bigger. He didn't just want to join, he wanted to reinvent them. Freddie proposed a new name, Queen. It was outrageous, regal, provocative, everything he was and everything he wanted the band to become. He also took on a new identity, Freddie Mercury, a name inspired by the Roman messenger god, a reflection of his belief in self-reinvention and theatricality. With the addition of bassist John Deacon, the lineup was complete. But Queen wasn't an overnight success. Record labels didn't know what to do with him. They weren't quite glam rock, not exactly prog, too operatic for punk, too theatrical for hard rock, but that's exactly what made them dangerous. And ultimately, iconic. In 1973, their debut album, Queen, hit the shelves. It wasn't a smash hit, but it made one thing clear. This band was different. The music was intricate, dramatic, and full of ambition. And at its center was Freddie, a frontman like no other. By 1975, with the release of A Night at the Opera, Queen finally detonated into the mainstream. The centerpiece, a 6-minute epic called Bohemian Rhapsody, a song with no chorus, operatic harmonies, and a guitar solo in place of a bridge. Everyone said it would flop. It became a legend. Freddie Mercury wasn't just leading a band, he was building a kingdom. King of the spotlight. By the late 1970s, Queen had conquered the charts. But Freddie wanted more. He wasn't satisfied with just being heard, he wanted to be seen, to be felt. His stage presence evolved into something operatic, almost supernatural. In leather or leotards, cloaked in capes, or shirtless in tight jeans, he strutted across stadiums like a lion in his domain. Microphone in hand, half of it broken off, an accident that became his signature, he commanded crowds like a sorcerer, weaving energy with every step. But his genius wasn't limited to performance. Freddie was a songwriting chameleon. One minute it was gospel-inspired power and Somebody to Love. The next it was rockabilly swagger with Crazy Little Thing Called Love. He moved through genres like he moved through personas. Fluid, fearless, and utterly unbothered by convention. Queen's music began to mirror his evolution. The albums grew more eclectic, the sound bolder. In 1977, News of the World gave the world We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions, two anthems that would outlive them all. Freddie had transformed from shy boarding school kid into a deity of rock and roll. But behind the stage lights, he was still searching for love, for identity, for something that couldn't be found in adoration alone. The 1980s brought changes. Freddie's long, flowing locks were gone, replaced by a short crop and a thick mustache. The flamboyant costumes gave way to rugged simplicity. His aesthetic had shifted, but his spirit hadn't. He was still pushing boundaries, this time exploring dance beats and funk grooves on albums like Hot Space, which featured Under Pressure, a haunting duet with David Bowie. While critics were divided, Freddie remained defiant. He wasn't here to be liked, he was here to create. His sexuality, once ambiguous and veiled, was becoming more visible. In his lyrics, his look, his life, but he still kept parts of himself hidden. The press speculated, fans whispered. Freddie remained silent. He once said, "I'm just me." But me for Freddie Mercury contained multitudes. Behind the velvet curtain. On stage, Freddie Mercury was larger than life, untouchable, dazzling, immortal. But off stage, he was searching. Not for stardom, he already had that, but for something far rarer. Authentic connection. The public saw a rock god. His close circle knew something more complex, a man torn between freedom and fear, fame and fragility. His most enduring relationship wasn't with a bandmate or a lover, but with Mary Austin. They met in the late 1960s when Queen was still a dream. Mary worked at a fashion boutique. Freddie was a student with a spark in his eye and big, chaotic plans. They became inseparable, lived together, loved one another. He once called her his common-law wife. But as the years passed, Freddie came to terms with a truth that would reshape their bond forever. He was attracted to men. When he told Mary, she didn't leave. Their romantic relationship ended, but their emotional one deepened. She remained his most trusted confidant, the one person he considered home. Freddie would later say, "All my lovers asked me why they couldn't replace Mary, but it's simply impossible." It was Mary who would inherit the majority of his estate. It was Mary who would scatter his ashes in a secret place known only to her. In the years that followed, Freddie had many partners, fleeting flings and deeper loves. But it wasn't until the 1980s that he found something resembling peace in the arms of Jim Hutton, a gentle Irish hairdresser. Their love was quiet, stable, and domestic, a kind of sanctuary far removed from the strobe lights and screaming crowds. They lived together, ate dinner by candlelight, tended the garden, and loved their cats. It was the life Freddie never showed the world, and perhaps the one he valued most. But even in these moments of calm, shadows crept in. He had secrets, ones even his fame couldn't protect him from. The silence before the storm. In the mid-1980s, something changed. Freddie Mercury, once the picture of vibrant excess, began to fade from public view. His appearances grew fewer, his frame thinner. Rumors began to swirl. Whispers about his health made their way into the tabloids. The word AIDS hung in the air. Terrifying, misunderstood, and loaded with stigma. Freddie said nothing. The truth? He had been diagnosed with HIV in 1987, and it had progressed to AIDS. But in an era where the disease was seen as a death sentence, often accompanied by shame and discrimination, Freddie made a fateful choice. He would not be defined by it. He would not become a public symbol of pity. He would remain what he had always been, a creator. While the disease ravaged his body, Freddie doubled down on the music. Queen returned to the studio to record what would be their final album with him, Innuendo. He pushed through the pain, recording vocals even when he could barely stand. His voice impossibly remained thunderous, as if he were battling death through sheer defiance. All the while, the public speculated. The press hounded. Photographs captured his fragile frame, his gaunt face, his silence, but still he gave no confirmation. Privately, Freddie was preparing. He stopped taking medication in his final weeks, knowing the end was near. He told those closest to him his wishes. He spent his days in his London home, the once lively Garden Lodge, now a quiet sanctuary filled with soft music, close friends, and the gentle presence of Jim Hutton. On November 23, 1991, Freddie released a short, simple statement. Following the enormous conjecture in the press, I wish to confirm that I have been tested HIV positive and have AIDS. I felt it correct to keep this information private to protect the privacy of those around me. However, the time has come now for my friends and fans around the world to know the truth. I hope that everyone will join with me, my doctors, and all those worldwide in the fight against this terrible disease. It was the first and last time he spoke publicly about it. The next day, November 24th, Freddie Mercury died at the age of 45. The world didn't just lose a singer, it lost a visionary, a rule breaker, a man who had dared to live and die on his own terms, and though his body failed him, his voice, that fierce and untamed operatic flame, would never go quiet. The legacy lives loud. The news of Freddie Mercury's death hit like a thunderclap across the globe. For fans, it was a heartbreak. For the music world, it was a wake-up call. For those living with AIDS, it was something even more. Visibility, humanity, hope. Freddie Mercury had spent his life challenging boundaries, musical, social, cultural, and personal. And even in death, he continued that rebellion. His final act, the public confirmation of his AIDS diagnosis, forced a conversation that many in power had tried to avoid. The very next year, in April 1992, Wembley Stadium transformed into a cathedral of sound and remembrance. The Freddie Mercury tribute concert for AIDS awareness brought together titans of rock and pop. David Bowie, Elton John, George Michael, Metallica, Annie Lennox, Guns N' Roses, all sharing one stage in his honor. More than 1 billion people around the world tuned in. It wasn't just a concert, it was a statement. From that moment on, Freddie's name became permanently etched into the broader fight against HIV and AIDS. The Mercury Phoenix Trust, founded by Queen and manager Jim Beach, began funding global initiatives for AIDS research, education, and support. To date, it has raised millions and impacted countless lives. But Freddie's legacy didn't rest solely in charity. It burned brightest where it always had, in the music. His voice, untouched by time, continues to echo in arenas, headphones, and cinema screens. Queen songs have become generational anthems, from the spine-tingling harmonies of Somebody to Love to the foot-stomping power of We Will Rock You. His presence is still felt, his absence is still loud, and in 2018, nearly 3 decades after his death, the world fell in love with him all over again. Immortal in lights and sound, when Bohemian Rhapsody, the film, was released in 2018, it became a phenomenon. Critics were divided, but audiences weren't. The biopic became one of the highest-grossing musical films of all time. For younger generations, it was an introduction. For longtime fans, it was a reminder. And for everyone watching, it was confirmation. Freddie Mercury was one of a kind. The actor Rami Malek won an Oscar for portraying him, but even on screen, it was Freddie's real voice, layered into the film's performances that sent chills down spines. There was no duplicating that power, that vibrato, that swagger. Freddie Mercury wasn't just a singer or a frontman. He was an idea that you could be outrageous and still be brilliant, that you could be strange, theatrical, too much, and still be everything. He gave people permission to be loud, to be different, to be fully themselves, especially those who had been told they weren't allowed. In the LGBTQ+ community, Freddie became, and remains, a symbol. He never waved a flag or made a political speech. He didn't need to. His life was a statement of queerness, of rebellion, of radiant contradiction. He was masculine and feminine, glamorous and grounded, fierce and fragile. And by simply existing, he broke barriers. His fashion, leotards, leather, silk, sequins, inspired generations of artists and designers. His vocal arrangements became textbook studies in music theory classrooms. His stage presence remains the benchmark for frontmen and women everywhere. Decades later, his music is still being played. His story is still being told. And that haunting photo, taken in August 1991 in the garden of his London home, remains etched in the minds of millions. Thin, pale, but standing proud, dressed in a patterned shirt and light trousers, with eyes that still sparkled with fire. It was his quiet goodbye. Yet somehow Freddie Mercury never truly left. His ashes may be scattered, his voice may be a recording, but his spirit, that bold, operatic, fearless force, is immortal. The man behind the legend. Freddie Mercury, the icon, was fearless, but Freddie Bulsara, the man behind the name, often lived in the shadow of fear. Fear of rejection, of exposure, of not being enough. Fame gave him the stage, but it also built a wall. Few were truly allowed past it. Despite his flamboyance and larger-than-life persona, Freddie was deeply private, even secretive. He rarely gave interviews. He never publicly acknowledged his sexuality during his lifetime, and behind closed doors, he fought a war that had little to do with spotlights. The expectations of his heritage weighed heavily. Born into a conservative Parsi family with deep-rooted Zoroastrian beliefs, Freddie had been raised under a strict code of modesty, discipline, and morality. His parents, especially his mother, Jer Bulsara, held tightly to these values. In public, Jer supported Freddie. In interviews after his death, she would describe him as kind and good-hearted. But privately, their relationship was complicated, especially when it came to who Freddie really was. The world celebrated him. His mother at times could not. The shocking truth? Jer never accepted his sexuality. She referred to his male partners simply as friends. She refused to attend gay clubs with him, not out of discomfort, but out of denial. According to close friends, one of Freddie's deepest wounds was his mother's inability to accept all of him. Though she loved him in her own way, she never truly embraced the man he had become. In his final days, as he grew weaker, Freddie reportedly said to Mary Austin, "She'll mourn me, but she'll never know me." It was a chilling confession, not of bitterness, but of resignation. Even as he prepared to die, Freddie Mercury still carried the pain of being half-loved. The price of greatness. There's a myth about greatness, that it comes with a cost. For Freddie Mercury, the cost was heavy: privacy, health, identity, and peace. The cocaine-fueled highs of the late 70s and early 80s were thrilling, but they left scars. Friends spoke of manic parties, broken relationships, and paranoia. Freddie could be intensely affectionate one moment and devastatingly cold the next. He was both the life of the party and a prisoner of his own walls. "I'm lonely," he once admitted in a rare, unguarded moment. "But I don't want to be pitied." Even his collaboration with Michael Jackson, a pairing that should have birthed brilliance, was torpedoed by Freddie's chaotic lifestyle. Jackson was disturbed by Freddie's drug use, once allegedly walking out of the studio mid-session because a dealer had been smuggled in. The cracks beneath the glitter were real and deep, but Freddie never asked for sympathy. What he wanted, what he demanded, was the right to live on his terms, and to die on them too. In his last weeks, he refused hospitalization, refused machines. He stayed in Garden Lodge surrounded by flowers, music, and love. He stopped treatment and let go, with dignity and defiance. And even in his most fragile moments, he gave his bandmates one last gift: music. Songs like These Are the Days of Our Lives and Mother Love were written and recorded when his voice was fading, but his soul was still burning. His final lyrics weren't about fame or glory, they were about farewell. Freddie Mercury didn't just perform, he unleashed. He didn't just sing, he roared. He wasn't trying to fit in. He was trying to break out. From Zanzibar to Wembley, from heartbreak to heroism, from whispered secrets to roaring stadiums, his journey was nothing short of mythic. But behind every wild performance, every perfectly chaotic lyric, was a man who just wanted to be seen, heard, and loved for exactly who he was. If Freddie's story moved you, tell us how. Drop a comment below, share your favorite Queen moment, or just type, "Still loving you, Freddie." And if you want more stories like this, raw, real, unforgettable, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this is only the beginning.